Okay, so the attack in New Orleans has a lot of people concerned about security in public spaces. So we wanted to bring on our next guest. We want to welcome John Torres, a security expert with private firm Guidepost. Before that, spent decades with Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and ICE. A lot of experience in this realm. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
Pleasure to be here, Amy.
So in this attack, Jabbar, a U.S. citizen, Army veteran, spent time in Afghanistan, left the military in 2020. Now we know he was recently radicalized. That part is shocking to a lot of people. It literally hits close to home. What did you think as you were learning these details about him?
Well, it's concerning from the aspect that when we think of international terrorism or terrorism committed by ISIS or Al-Qaeda or organizations in the Middle East, for example, you think that they're going to be a foreign national and they're not going to be someone who is a U.S. citizen based here. But since 9/11, it's become much more difficult for those types of people to travel to the United States, especially if they have a history of traveling through Afghanistan or through areas where there are known terrorist associations. So with that, it's much easier for someone to become inspired online through and become radicalized by using different access to the internet and being able to train basically here in the United States and then commit an act.
Is a lone wolf terrorist like this more dangerous than a larger terrorist group, do you think?
Well, they're both very dangerous. Don't get me wrong with that. But I will say that it's more difficult to detect them because if they're operating alone and they are communicating with very few people, if anyone at all, then it's very difficult to detect someone like that. That's why you heard the FBI saying they're pouring through all their electronics, digital media, computers, phones, tablets, et cetera. They're going to reach out to anyone that's had any communication with them recently. But unless they are talking to someone, you don't know that this is going to happen. And you heard where Jabbar posted things online here a few hours before the incident. Unless someone was paying attention to that and raised the flag, raised the alarm, and called the police and say, hey, it looks like he's going to do something here. He might harm himself. Someone needs to talk to him, especially if it's being posted at 3 a.m. right before the attack happened. You don't have enough time to respond to that, and it makes it very difficult to monitor someone like that, even if they are paying attention to social media.
I hate to have you look into your crystal ball here and look into the future, but do you think there will be a time soon when technology will take us to a place where videos like that, things like that, could be flagged sooner?
They could be flagged sooner, and they are being flagged now, and they are being monitored by a lot of different people. In fact, even in the private sector now, in corporate security, we pay attention. We do the social media scraping and monitoring to look at real-time threats, especially if a company CEO is being threatened. We'll pay attention to that for them. But to the extent that you can actually find out what they're saying, and in this case, unless he's going to say, I'm about to go mow down a bunch of people on Bourbon Street, you really have to figure out what is his intention. You know he's about to do something bad, but what exactly is he going to do?
Yeah. We know in this case that there were security malfunctions. The police have admitted that in New Orleans, the bollards not working properly, the street wedge blockade not lifted. It was down. They did have a police car parked where that wedge should have been. The terrorists obviously got around it. So the answer from police, the quote yesterday was, "We had a plan. The terrorists defeated it." And I think that's really hard for a lot of people to hear. Is that the harsh reality, or were there other things that should have been done?
Well, terrorists are always going to look for ways to defeat any type of law enforcement plan or any type of security plan that's in place. They want to attack an area where they can inflict the most damage and have the greatest impact, especially someplace like Bourbon Street or at a concert, like at the Manchester Arena bombing with Ariana Grande concert years back. But there are things you can do, and there are best practices that are currently in place. I'm based in Washington, D.C. If I go to a Washington Nationals game, the street in front of the stadium is blocked off, and they put cement trucks out front. It could be cement trucks, dump trucks, sand trucks, anything where you can't pass through onto the street using a car to ram people, because that has happened in other places around the world recently. So there are definitely things that you could do for best practices purposes, but there's also an evolving security plan that's called CPTED. It's crime prevention through environmental design. And we have many experts here at Guidepost that are trained in that, and we deploy that for some of our clients so that you use the natural terrain. It's in addition to bollards after the Oklahoma City bombing, but you are able to use a number of different techniques to prevent either rammings or truck bombs or different types of terrorist attacks that we've seen in the past.
We talked a little bit about the sort of red flags in the technological sense, the videos that have been posted. We've seen that in other mass shootings and things. So there are the more sort of tangible, maybe isn't the right word, but those types of red flags. What about the see something, say something mentality? How important is that to tracking somebody down prior to them doing some serious damage?
That's critically important, Amy. And I think back to the San Bernardino attack at the holiday party, where the employee went overseas, and when he came back, his whole demeanor had changed, his personality had changed. He was much more angry. He grew a full-length beard. He talked a lot more religiously, and no one really said anything about that until he had a mass shooting at the holiday party. And so it's critically important for people to raise that awareness so that someone could take a look at it, even if it's internally within their own company, and they raise that to people operations, human resources, whoever might have that type of responsibility. That's really important.
Yeah, and I imagine for some people, there's a fine line between, trying to stereotype somebody and having concerns. But you're saying if you see something, say something, because it maybe can't hurt in the long run, is what I'm hearing from you.
Sure, and the alternative is a lot worse in a situation like this.
Yeah, okay. Just my last question to you is just, I guess, on the issue of domestic terrorism. A lot of people, many people who are watching this right now maybe weren't even alive during 9/11, but the experience of many people is like, as you said earlier, that terrorism comes from foreign adversaries. The domestic terrorism threat in the U.S. as we enter 2025, what does it look like to you?
Sadly, I think it's becoming increasing. It's more dangerous now than what we've seen in the past. You think back to Oklahoma City, and that was a major domestic terrorism incident, as we all know. But things have settled down a little bit since then, and we really just have been seeing, unfortunately, mass shootings. But in this type of scenario, it's very much more commonplace for people to become radicalized domestically here without having to travel abroad and do training abroad, because everything is available online at this point.
All right, John Torres with Guidepost now. We appreciate you sharing some of your insight and experience with us, and we'll hopefully talk to you again soon. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Amy.
You bet.